Right, okay, just create a sprite to move under velocity. So I'm just in the title setup where you actually create the actual sprites is you're going to probably make something different to generate the sprites, but this is how you just make a basic sprite. So I'm going to do it complete from scratch. So I'm just going to say new sprite. So I'm not even going to keep a reference to this because what I might do is kill it after a certain amount of time, and I'll show you how to do that. So I'm going to create a new sprite. But what I want to give it is position information. So where I want it to be on screen and its velocity. So I'm going to put some parameters in here. All right. So remember, what I'm doing is I'm going to get Visual Studio to do all the work. So I'm going to say a new vector2. So an XY position. So I'm just going to put it at 200, 200. Now I'm going to get loads of red squiggles. Um, vec I didn't put two. I don't know. Better. And then I want a velocity, and again that's going to be two-dimensional. So what I'm just going to do is I'll turn gravity on, and I'll just do a horizontal velocity. So I'm going to say new vector2. So 100 pixels second to the right, but I'm not going to have any vertical motion. Right. So that's what I'm going to. Um, right. I can't use the keyword sprite, so I'm going to have to come up with whatever this thing is. So I'm just going to call it. I won't call it object because that's a keyword. Moving sprite, I'll call it. Okay, so that's basically what I've done there is I've said, right, I want to call the constructor for an object called moving sprite, which doesn't exist, and I want to give it two parameters, two-dimensional numbers. So I'm going to get Visual Studio to create that. Now it doesn't know anything about any of this, so I'm just going to do it. So right, generate a type, generate a class. So that's what I want. So it's going to jig, 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 jig. And then we're going to press F12 while we've got the cursor on moving sprite, and we're going to go to the code it's produced. Right, so it's included the library that vector2 was in, so it's done that for us, but we haven't got the other ones. So we're going to go back to title setup, and we're just going to grab all the using statements, and we're going to put them in. Where's my sprite gone? Moving sprite. Remember, if you want to pin it, you can click the little folder and it keeps it there. Right, so I'm just going to put all those in. Right, we want this to be a sprite, so it's going to inherit from sprite. Okay, so I'll put the inheritance in. Now, what it's done, because it doesn't know what any of these things are, it's just given random names. Well, they're not random, it's trying to do it based off that. But the first parameter was going to be position, and that was going to be our velocity. So I'm just going to call them pos and vel. Now, I don't need to store these. By default, it'll like try and store everything, but we've actually got properties for the sprite anyway. So we're going to get rid of all them. The first thing we do whenever we create a sprite is we add it to the game engine so it can render it and move it around for us. So we're going to say gm.enginemanager.add sprite this. If you ever create a sprite and nothing appears on screen, check you've got that line in there, because if you haven't, it won't. You'll have created a sprite, but the game engine doesn't know anything about it. Right, so we can set these positions up. So we can say position 2D. Right, so position 2D, we can just say position 2D equals pos. So that'll place it on the screen. And then we can set the velocity. So velocity is a 3D thing, but we're just going to work with the 2D, and we're just going to say vel. Now, sprite isn't going to do much if we don't have an image. So what we'll also do is just create a frame for it. And I'm just going to use one of the standard textures. I'm going to use a ball shape. So I'm going to go text dot, and I'm going to just do a 32 by 32 circle. Okay. So that will give me a circle with a radius of 16 because it's 32 wide and tall, diameter 32 basically. Right, so theoretically that is all we need to do to get a moving object. So let's just review it. So we just said new moving sprite. So I could actually make two now because I've put those parameters in there so I can set a different position. So I could go copy paste, set another position. So let's do it at 400, but make it go left. So that's the beauty of objects. So I create them at once and I can use it multiple times. Right, so let's just run it. See if it works. It built it. Let's just see if it runs. And there you go. Right, so they're moving and they've gone off the screen, which may or may not be what we want. Right, so the next thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to comment out that text that's drawn on screen so we don't see it. Right, so the next thing I want to do, I'm going to put gravity on for those moving sprites. So I'm going to say gravity, and again, this is a vector 3, but I just want to set a Y gravity. So I'm going to set it to, I don't know, 50. Run that, see the effect. Oh, what have I done? Spec. Oh, right, yeah. It's because it's on a multi-line, so I've got to actually do this. Comment the whole block out. So you see they're falling. Obviously, they're going to fall off the screen. So the other thing I want to probably do is limit them to an area of the screen. So you can do that by activating the limit system. So you have to do limit initialize first, and then you can use the limit object. Right, and there's loads of things. You can actually set your own rectangular regions, but we can ask what the screen region is. So we can say viewport action. So whatever the screen is, so it limits to the screen. And all we need to do is say, what do we want to happen at the viewport? So that's the limit action. And we can make it bounce. We can make it wrap around the screen. So if we've got gravity on, we probably want to, what we can do is wrap in the X direction. So they go left and right off the screen, but they hit the bottom. So we'll try that one. So if we run it again, so they should bounce, but they will wrap on the screen. Now, obviously, these are just individual sprites. In order to create those sprites and manage them so that you can do your collision detections, what you might need to do is something like this. So where we created the sprites, what we probably should do is create some storage, a linked list or something to store the sprites. So I'm going to say list of sprite, and I'm going to say my sprites equals, and this is how you create a linked list. And what I will do, every time I create a sprite, I will add it to that list of sprites. Okay. Now you can do it that way. So I'll show you how you do that. So where we've just said new, what we can actually say is my sprites. So it doesn't like it if you don't have a space. So my sprites dot add, and then just pass it the sprite with. So the reference to the sprite, which we didn't have before, is actually now stored in that list. And we can do that again. So we can say, make sure we've got space, my sprites dot add, and add that sprite. So we've now got a way of messing about with those sprites. So we can like go through that list. We can say, right, sprite number 0, sprite number 1, and we can like then do the collision detection stuff for that to see if they're overlapping and all those sort of things. Okay, but that's the basics of just creating a moving sprite. So it doesn't change anything. There actually is in the game engine, you can actually say gm.enginemanager.sprite list and get all the sprites. But if you've got other sprites that are not part of your collision thing, then, but you can enumerate, you can go through that list and say, is it a moving sprite? And then ignore all the other sprites. So there's lots of things you can do to get access to the sprites. So you can manually store them yourself, When they get destroyed, if you're going to kill things, although it depends what you're simulating, um, they'll automatically get taken out of the sprite list. If you manage your own list, you'll have to keep track of that yourself, which can get messy, to be honest. Because if the game engine's trying to draw something that you've killed, then it might go all mad. I've put loads of code in to try and stop that. So it tries to like ignore processing dead things. Okay.